Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Gosztola. I'm the managing editor for Shadowproof and also the curator for The Dissenter. And welcome. And I'll just put this up here for those of you who are joining. This is the website that you can go to get my updates and coverage of the Julian Assange case, and then other coverage of whistleblower stories. Of course, we're here today to discuss President Donald Trump and the Justice Department's investigation, the FBI's search warrant affidavit was unsealed. You've probably seen it's like a holiday for CNN and MSNBC, and they've got everyone is deployed and ready to go. But I don't need, you're going to see, I don't need 8 people to join me in a broadcast to break down this affidavit. I just have John Kiriakou, who is a former CIA officer as well as a whistleblower. He himself was prosecuted under the Espionage Act, then pled guilty to the Intelligence Identities Protection Act, did some time in prison. He knows all about these issues, and he's here to talk with me. So welcome back, John.
Thanks, Kev. Happy to do it.
And so let's begin, because first, the thing I want to play for you is this MSNBC clip. And I'll probably stop and start it just a little bit along the way, but I want people to get a flavor for the difference between what they do and what we do, because I thought this was really silly. I just thought it's usually the case that we don't want to rely on them for their coverage these days, but also, I mean, I'm constantly impressed by what they're able to. So look at all these people. Look at all these people. How many of these people do you need? This looks like the worst team building exercise ever. And anyways, they got all of these people together. I'm going to go to the beginning here and start this. Will be first. Let's see. And let me know if you can't hear it.
9 pages of the affidavit in support of an application under Rule 41A for the warrant to search and seize. So I think you're all going to be starting to get this as I am now getting it. Let me just show you also the list of redactions, which is listed by paragraph. So this is the list of paragraphs that have been blacked out and redacted.
Why do they do this, John? Why do they do this kind of media where they don't know what they're reading and they just try to do live news before they even know what they're reading?
I was actually in the middle of my show when this thing was released. And my colleague and I, Michelle Whitty, decided not to comment on it substantively because everything was redacted. And we didn't have any idea what it said. Now, if you read it and then reread it, you can make you can draw a couple of conclusions. But, to have 8 talking heads sitting there on MSNBC, all pretending to know what they're talking about, it's just silly.
Here, so I'm just going to play a little bit more.
One involves agent
safety. And then,
safety.
Again, it's like what you just said, the example.
Ryan Riley, have you been able to read some of this?
Put him on the spot.
Ryan,
no, he hasn't.
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Tell us what you know.
Sure. So I think one highlight I wanted to bring up here is that in this affidavit, the NARA referral is referenced here, and the NARA's White House liaison division director, after a preliminary review of these 15 boxes that were originally received to the National Archives from Trump, went through those boxes and found they contained newspaper, magazines, printed news articles, photos, miscellaneous printouts, notes, presidential correspondence, personal and post-presidential records, and, quote, open quote, a lot of classified records, close quote. So that was what sort of kicked this all off. All of these classified records that were found by the National Archives when they eventually received this initial load of boxes that came in from the Trump camp after he left office.
I'm looking even on page 2 here. It says that the
FBI's
investigation has
look,
established that documents bearing classification markings.
All of these people, they don't know what they're going to say, what they're going to do. They're just looking
among
around.
The materials it contained in the 15 boxes that were stored at the premises in an unauthorized location. And that is, again, the initial 15 boxes. Further, there is
and that's all I'm really going to play. There's nothing else to really say there, but they're all on screen. And in that clip that they posted, none of those people talk except for Ryan Riley the whole entire time.
Oh
that they
my
do
God.
that segment. And it's just, I mean, first off, the waste of money. All those people got paid to show up.
Yeah, they're
on
all getting
air.
paid. That's right. They're all on contract. They're all getting paid. Yes.
And they're all like looking blank, deer
Yeah,
in
like, oh crap,
headlights.
I hope she doesn't call on me.
One guy's thumbing through the pages over here. What does this mean? I don't even know what this means yet. Nobody knows what it means.
Nobody knows what it means. Nobody knows because so much of it is redacted. You can't draw any real conclusions.
So I got some slides here. We'll go through, and there are some things we can talk about. Otherwise, I wouldn't have wasted your time.
That were
I wouldn't have asked you to come do this if there wasn't truly some things to talk about. I mean, I have my own knowledge of this to draw from, but I think we knew that there were going to be heavy redactions.
Yeah.
We knew that the judge was going to protect a lot of this information. But before I get going, there are people who are making donations to the work that we do, and I want to say thank you for that. And thank you for all of those people out there who support the work that I do, as well as what John does. I believe we are the voices that you should be listening to, and I think the broadcast we did a couple of weeks ago after there was the search. That proved that what we were doing. The search warrant was unsealed. That proved that we really do have a lot more credibility than they do. And then just again,
let me interrupt you on that. I was very proud of what we did in that talk, and I ended up writing it up and sending it to Joe Loria at Consortium News. It was published this morning, and I posted it on Twitter this morning without even really thinking about it. I don't spend a whole lot of time on Twitter, but I went back today, and I've never blocked anybody on Twitter just because it's not that terribly important to me. I had to block 6 people. I was called a Nazi, a reactionary, a fascist, a fake lefty, all different kinds, a Russian stooge, only because I said that Donald Trump shouldn't be charged with espionage, not because he's Donald Trump and not because he didn't illegally take out documents, but because the Espionage Act is a flawed law that is used to silence whistleblowers. And people just jumped on me like, I felt like beaten up about the face and head by the end of the day. It was really shocking to me.
So I'm just gonna put this on screen for just a second. Just as a
thank you, Gregory.
Thank you for
Gregory's exactly right.
And then yeah, okay. So this is what one more nuisance, and then we'll get into the substance of our conversation. So Julian Barnes over at the New York Times put up this explainer on the Espionage Act.
Yeah,
I've been watching very closely to what the media puts out about this law, just because I think we are in a danger zone here when it comes to Donald Trump, when it comes to legitimizing something that was used against you and others who never deserved to be prosecuted under this law. And what we see here is we got to keep our eyes on the media, because here we get this weaselly language that says, and I'll read it to you and I'll get your reaction, John. Now, hopefully you're as irritated as I am by the way this is written. In recent years, some on the left have criticized the law, saying it was used to prosecute people who leaked government secrets. Now, Republicans are denouncing the act after the Justice Department referred to it in its search warrant to retrieve documents from Mr. Trump's home in Palm Beach, Florida, including some that were marked classified. Some on the left? Why are we fringe? Why are we making it a fringe?
That is so offensive. And it's incorrect. I mean, you can look at figures on the right, like Alan Dershowitz, or Bruce Fine, or any number of conservative groups that are concerned about constitutionality and civil liberties, American Conservative Magazine, the Hudson Institute. So it's just factually incorrect to say that some on the left have complained about the Espionage Act. No, people who love civil liberties, people who love civil rights and human rights and the rule of law have complained about the Espionage Act. There's
Yeah,
nothing fringe about this at all.
There's nothing wrong with the left being the representative here, but the civil society organizations are not the left. The ACLU, Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press, Committee to Protect Journalists, go on down the list of people in these groups, human rights organizations. This is not the left.
No, this is not the left. I mean, I'm proud to associate with the left. I'm a proud what are we calling ourselves now? Progressive. But you know, to equate it with some sort of a fringe view on civil liberties, come on, New York Times. What a typical mainstream phony neoliberal thing to say.
It is. All right. So going back to, okay. So, you know, like you said, there's these like heavy redactions throughout it. And so this is basically what it looks like. And I guess they can't tell us more, share more about the trucks that are moving the information. And then again, the provision of the 15 box to the National Archives, which we already know about. I guess that this is something that they have to protect. I'm not really sure what they're protecting here. Then this one's the most hilarious, where it says there is probable cause to believe that documents containing classified national defense information and presidential records remain at the premises, and you get none of it. So the public can't read the probable cause at all for any of it.
Nope.
And I guess, you know, on one hand, I recognize that they are trying to ensure that Donald Trump can't harass and intimidate any of the sources the Justice Department is working with. On the other hand, I feel like the Justice Department could have maybe shared a little bit of detail on what the probable cause is in that section.
Absolutely. And may I comment on something that one of your viewers, hey, Roger makes a very important point here. He says, theft is theft. F. POTUS will have a tough time claiming this stuff is low value since he's always claimed that his name alone adds 1,000%. You're absolutely right. And this is a point that I think is very important and should be part of the overall conversation about what to do legally to move this case forward. I mentioned in this article that I wrote in Consortium News that when I was still at the CIA, I sat next to a woman who was having an affair with a former senior CIA officer who had retired and gone over to CNN. And in the course of pillow talk, she revealed some classified information to him, and he ran straight to CNN and blabbed it on the air. Well, the CIA filed a crimes report, and the FBI did an investigation, and they immediately tied the information back to her. Okay, today, she would be charged with espionage, and she would be facing a 10-year federal prison sentence. But what they did to her, and this was not too terribly long ago, this was 1996, they put a letter of reprimand in her personnel file. They suspended her without pay for 4 weeks, and they made her ineligible for promotion for 2 years. That was an appropriate punishment. Now, what she was found guilty of was theft of government property. Even though she took the property out in her head, you know, she walked out with the information and passed the information to somebody else. Technically theft, same kind of thing they tried to charge Tom Drake with. It didn't rise to the level of espionage. It was only at the tail end of the George W. Bush administration that they decided to weaponize the Espionage Act. And then Barack Obama went forward with it, you know, with guns blazing, and so did Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. But there are other ways to punish people who take out classified information. It doesn't have to be under the Espionage Act.
Yeah. There are that. So one thing to say before we get back to the affidavit itself is, you know, the opening, I do think, does a good job for clarifying to the public why the Justice Department is conducting the search. And if you didn't believe the news media, it's really good to see the details just laid out right there. I mean, it opens like this. The government is conducting a criminal investigation concerning the improper removal and storage of classified information in unauthorized spaces, as well as the unlawful concealment or removal of government records. Mm-hmm. And I think what's really important to do is distinguish Donald Trump from you or from Thomas Drake or from Edward Snowden. because I don't know if people who are talking about this are doing a good enough job of articulating to people how different the facts of this case are from the cases in which we've defended people who were prosecuted. Again, we don't know that Donald Trump's going to be prosecuted. And I think both of you, we both agree that it's highly unlikely the Justice Department charges him under the Espionage Act.
Yes.
But that being said, what he's done is so far and away different from the people who we think are truth tellers. He takes his information home. I mean, in order for it to be similar to anyone before who we've defended, it would have to be like Edward Snowden took the information, took it back to his bungalow or his pad, wherever he's living, and he stored it there, and he'd check it every once in a while, and he'd take good care of it, and he thought it made him cool, and he told his friends he had the information from the NSA, but he never did anything with it, and we never heard about it, and we didn't know what he had in the material. That's essentially what Donald Trump was doing.
Yes. Yeah, Kevin, I have to say, too, I laughed out loud when I read what Trump had done with this correspondence with Kim Jong-Un. Did you see this?
Yeah.
My God, this was so funny. Normally, when the president writes a letter to another foreign leader, there's a very formal process by which that letter is delivered. It's sent by diplomatic pouch to the American embassy in that country or to the American interest section in the country that's representing American interests. And then it's hand delivered by an ambassador. Donald Trump FedExed the letter to Kim Jong-Un specifically because he wanted a tracking number so he could follow its progress on his phone. I've never in my life seen anything like this.
Yeah.
Never seen anything like it. Just incredible.
Yeah. And it says, I mean, this is incredible. I mean, I should just read some of this so people have this antidote, I guess. More than a year had passed since the officials had begun talking with him. And you've got that a senior archives official instructs a former lawyer who had been appointed to send the letters. Okay, so the National Archives actually asks them to FedEx it. It's crazy. But I mean, just to think that like classified material is moving through the private mail system. And not through the USPS system. I guess FedEx is more secure than USPS. That says a lot, I suppose.
Well, there's actually a rule. If you are FedExing or mailing classified information, you have to put it in an envelope and you have to seal it, like cover the entire thing in clear tape. It has to be stamped before you tape it. Property of the U.S. government, classified documents, returned to, this address if found. And then you have to put it in a second envelope and then wrap that one. And that way, if the outside envelope breaks open, the inside envelope is still sealed and it says classified, and you're supposed to return it to the federal government. It's not secure. And listen, if the United States has units that can surreptitiously open mail, and we have since the 20s, so do the Chinese and the Russians and the Iranians and the French and the British and the Cubans and everybody else who might be interested in presidential correspondence with a foreign leader.
Well, yeah. Okay, so let's get back to, I'm going to remove this. Let's get back to our blacked out documents. So this was, it's going to be hard for people to read this, but this was something that was, I'm gonna take us down just to make this a little larger. This is a footnote that that you probably can't really see very well, but it was what I found this to be an important footnote. And I know that getting in the weeds is sometimes when we lose people, but I do think it's worth making the point here that is made in this affidavit, where they actually are saying that the threshold for going after Donald Trump is so low that you don't really, that there's not a whole lot that we need to do. And they cite the case law and they're saying that, look, national defense information isn't classified information. It's much more broad. The generic concept is one that then they're listing these cases, and they're basically saying that some cases, even aside from the fact that you have to show it's closely held information, Some cases actually have held that the disclosure of documents must be potentially damaging, but some have held that you don't even have to show that they're damaging at all. Some have shown that, like, so I pointed this out to people who follow my work just to show that, to me, if we learn anything from what we're going through right now, it's that this national defense information is a construct of our three branches of government that serves, and this is my view, the national security state, because it helps them more closely guard their secrets. And maybe in this instance, it's justified for them to invoke it, but there are many other times in which they are broadly weaponizing national defense information as this concept so that we don't know the information that we need to learn.
Yeah, good point. And, you know, I would remind everybody of, again, the Tom Drake case, where Tom Drake truly did not disclose classified information or national defense information to a person not entitled to receive it. In a conversation that he had with a reporter for the Baltimore Sun, the information was clearly marked unclassified. And he was charged with 7 counts of espionage anyway, because the government argued that the information should have been classified. And because Tom Drake was a national security professional, he should have recognized that the information should have been classified. So this is just a bullshit kind of law that the Justice Department can twist to use as a weapon against anybody it wants.
Yeah. And look, I won't hide that in my coverage, I'll have an agenda. I'm going to constantly, if the Justice Department really does want to charge Donald Trump, I'm going to constantly be steering them back to the obstruction of justice charge, or this records and reports charge. In the criminal code, there's a records and reports section, and he's accused of mutilation or, you know, whatever he did to those records that he shouldn't have done to deface them. That's apparently something that you can charge. Fine. Either of those, I don't feel like that threatens our democracy if you get charged with violating either of those provisions.
Right. You know, and we should note too that there's a difference between Section 793 of the Espionage Act and Section 794. 794 is used to prosecute people who are spying for foreign powers, who mean to do harm to the U.S. national security. But 793 is a political weapon. There was a proposed bill earlier this year, and I think it was Ilhan Omar that had sponsored it. Is that
Rashida Tlaib has been
Rashida Tlaib?
leading.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And unfortunately, it didn't get out of committee. But I know you read it. I read it. A couple of other people that I know read it, and it was a terrific attempt to begin reforming the Espionage Act. I'm wondering now if congressional Republicans are going to be so furious that Merrick Garland has the audacity to investigate their hero and demigod, Donald Trump, under 793, that maybe Republicans will finally come around and say, you know what, this is something important that we can work with Democrats on. It's a bad law that's been on the books for more than 100 years. It's time to scrap it and maybe redo it.
Yeah, I'm reluctant, given the political makeup of elites and how subservient they are to national security agencies, to see them remove it and then replace it with something, because I don't know what they would replace it with. And it could be worse. But what I will give those who have followed this closely, like I recently interviewed Bill Arkin, who's been doing really fabulous reporting at Newsweek on the raid and the search of and the investigation itself, and talking to sources. You know, and he made this really essential point, which was that we don't have a law that deals with the security classification system.
That's right. We don't.
And it's way, way, way beyond time that they come up with something. The problem for our Congress is that I don't think they can write a law without creating an Official Secrets Act that violates the First Amendment. And I believe that's why we don't have a law yet.
Yeah. You know, a lot of them would want an Official Secrets Act, which would be even worse than the Espionage Act.
So Gregory has a question for you, and then I'll get to the other
Okay.
few that I have here, which he wants you to confirm that the lunch menu at the CIA is classified.
Actually, it used to be, yes. When I first started at the CIA, there were two separate cafeterias. There was a large one that was called the classified cafeteria, and then there was a small one where you could take visitors who weren't cleared. Like if somebody came over for the day from the State Department or the Office of Personnel Management or whatever, and it was lunchtime, you could take them there. It was very small, and it was an unclassified menu. But yeah, stupid as it sounds, the menu in the cafeteria was classified. And so they ended up scrapping all of that, like around the year 2000, I guess. They made the little cafeteria into an event space. And then the big cafeteria, instead of having an actual CIA cafeteria, they put in a Starbucks, a Subway, a Dunkin' Donuts, and, all name brand silly stuff. There was a Panda Express. So yeah, so it's not classified anymore, but it was for many, many years. Yes.
All right. So I'm going to go through some of my notes here. So one thing that stood out to me in the affidavit was that, they are saying very clearly that the agent was saying that they're going to determine whether the Mar-a-Lago storage locations for classified information were authorized.
Yeah.
That's a fascinating thing to me. Like, I know we kind of got that from the search itself, but what's fascinating about the affidavit and then this whole thing is, was the Justice Department going to try to make the space secure and just leave the information there?
No, there's also a process for that. So what they're talking about there is something called a vaulted space. You've got to have, a steel door with a big bank vault kind of, spin lock on it and motion detectors. There's a way to do this. And then it has to have a safe, not like the safe you buy at Costco, but like one of these heavy duty 500-pound solid steel kind of safes. And then you have to treat the windows so that nobody can, shoot a laser beam at it and detect the vibrations on the window to try to decipher what it is you're saying. It's a process, and it's kind of expensive. They built one of these vaults over at the Eastern District of Virginia when Jeffrey Sterling was on trial, so he could have classified conversations with his attorneys. And it cost about $125,000. There are a handful of these things in defense contractors' offices around Washington. So every former president, when he leaves office, gets a secret security clearance, not top secret. So he doesn't have that security clearance on a daily basis. Like, he's not receiving classified briefings anymore on a daily basis. If the former president is interested in something, he can call a liaison officer at Langley and say, hey, I'm really interested in what's going on in Sri Lanka right now. Can you send an analyst down to brief me? And a couple of analysts will fly to wherever the president happens to be. They'll give him a briefing at the secret level, but it contains no information from NSA and information from human sources only if it has been pre-cleared by the CIA's Directorate of Operations. So, just to have classified documents sitting around, even if it is in your Costco safe, it doesn't meet the requirements.
Yeah. Okay. And so we also see that they're going to go and identify people who may have removed or retained the classified information without authorization, which I suppose I think it's worth posing this question to you. We've seen a lot of investigations into Trump. You got the January 6th, you've got the Russia investigation, and all the time Donald Trump escapes, but some of his minions get charged. And I guess effectively they sort of are like the fall guys for whatever Donald Trump was up to. I mean, I know that there's varying understandings and there's really no consensus on what Trump did and whether it even was criminal when it comes to the Russia investigation, truly. But I suppose that could happen here, right? Like, there could be people in the Trump organization who get charged and Trump's okay.
Yeah, if the FBI develops information indicating that some assistant or some secretary was seen going through the boxes or filing the documents that were in the boxes or moving the boxes from one room to another, yeah, that person can be charged with a crime. One of the things that is going to be, to me, very interesting is eventually we're going to be able to figure out who the rat was. And, you know, there were a couple of articles saying, oh, it was Jared Kushner. He wants his old life back and he doesn't want Trump to run for president. I heard the other day it's Matt Gaetz, which doesn't make any sense at all. I think based on what we learned today from the parts of the document that weren't redacted, I think it was the Secret Service. They're there 24/7. They have access to the office. They know what's classified and what's not classified. And if it is classified, how it should be treated. I think the Secret Service ratted him out.
I like that theory. Oh, and there is one housekeeping item that is worth doing. 2 weeks ago when we talked, we talked about this Saudi theory with the nukes. And,
Yes.
And the Washington Post had said something about nuclear weapons. I think it's pretty clear at this point that was overblown.
Yeah.
And what they were referring to were these letters between Trump and Kim Jong-Un about the negotiations, you know, the potential peace negotiations over denuclearization. That's my opinion.
Yes, I think you're exactly right on that. You know, it was interesting speculation at the time. And admittedly, that's all it was speculation, because everybody knows that the Saudis have been seeking nuclear technology since the 1980s. They know that Trump has a very close relationship with the Saudi royal family, so people were throwing the idea out there. I agree with you that it's likely not the case.
Yeah. Okay. So then one thing we do get from there's a section where they lay out the like definitions of the different terms they're going to use, and then when they deal with those terms, that's all redacted. But what we know and can figure out is that you're going to be dealing with that in your affidavit. Right. And so we've gotten that they put human intelligence control system. They define what that is. And they say it's intelligence information derived from clandestine human sources.
Yes.
They talk about SCI. They talk about something called special intelligence too.
Yeah.
And they talk about no foreign, which is information that you can't expose to foreigners. And then another category that I hadn't even heard of before, but maybe you knew of, originator controlled, or ORCON, where you're not allowed to like share it with anybody who wasn't approved.
So on your very first day at the CIA, literally your very first day, you learn these terms. These are all important terms. So we'll start with human intelligence. Human intelligence, or HUMINT, is intelligence that is collected from a live human being as your source, your recruited source, okay? Just by default, all HUMINT is classified under an authority called HUM 4-82. And it is automatically classified at the secret, no foreign, no contract, ORCON level. That means it's secret. There are three classifications. There's confidential, secret, and top secret. And then there are other, they're not classifications, but controls beyond those. So it's classified at the secret level. No foreign means it's not releasable to foreigners. And when I say foreigners, I mean foreign intelligence services. No contract means it's not releasable to contractors, even if they're cleared. They can't have the information. Because, you know, the CIA, only like 50% of the people that work at the CIA are actual CIA employees. Everybody else is working for Raytheon and SAIC and CACI and all these a million different contractors. So that information is not releasable to them. And then ORCON means originator controlled. So for example, if I'm writing a paper that's going to go to the Secretary of State and the Deputy Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor, and I use secret, no foreign, no contract, ORCON, HUMINT. When I finish my paper, I have to send the paper and attach the original source document and send it to the Office of Clearance Control and say, I'm writing this paper, I'm using this information, and I want it to be released for eyes only for the Secretary of State, the Deputy Secretary of State, and the National Security Advisor. And then they'll document that those three people saw it and nobody else can see it. So
Mhm.
that's what that document is. The bottom line is it's sensitive intelligence derived from a human source.
Mhm. Okay.
SCI is special compartmented information. That's a euphemism for an electronic intercept. So everything that comes out of NSA is called SI, special intelligence, SCI, special compartmented information. It's also normally classified at something called the SITK gamma level. So it's special intelligence, code words talent keyhole gamma. And so each one of those compartments makes the circle of people who can see it smaller and smaller and smaller.
Mhm.
We were always told from my very first week, again, at the agency, we were told that there were 3 holy of holies. These are the things that you never, ever talk about. One was liaison relationships, one was sources and methods, and the other was anything coming out of NSA. So, like you, I'm led to believe, because these terms were in the redacted affidavit, that Donald Trump took special compartmented information with him, and that's going to be a serious problem. Now, one other thing too, in the use of the Espionage Act in a national security prosecution like that, they will tell the court, the prosecution will tell the court what level of damage revelation of the information has caused or could cause to the national security.
Yeah.
SCI is what they call the gravest, that's the word they use, the gravest damage to the national security. The gravest. I mean, Ed Snowden didn't release that stuff. Chelsea Manning didn't release that stuff.
Mhm.
This is beyond, it's classified above what those guys ever did.
Yeah. Okay. So you pled guilty to the Intelligence Identities Protection Act violation. It sounds like this material probably puts Trump in violation of the IIPA.
It could. If there is a single name of any CIA officer who has served overseas in the last 5 years, whether they're active or retired is irrelevant, he's violated the IIPA.
Is it only CIA or are there other agents covered?
Now there are other agents covered. When it was first written in 1981, it was meant to counter what Philip Agee had been doing. He had written several books that revealed the identities of some CIA officers. But now that's been extended to whatever they're calling Defense Human Services now. They include NSA's undercover officers. There are even contractors now who are undercover. The Navy SEALs are included. So, there are a lot of people that are protected by this thing.
Okay, so if Trump was proud about a raid that he had launched that involved people who were undercover, then they would be in the documents and he would have compromised their identity.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I think that's one of those things that we're going to learn more about in the coming months.
Yeah. Okay. So we got a good question. And then I've got another thing from the affidavit to ask you about. But I think while we do have people tuned in, it's good to stay engaged with them. And I'm going to put up this on the screen. So what would be the punishment if Trump did what was convicted of the laws that you are talking about? And I'll frame it to you, John, as like, this is kind of a complex thing, in my opinion, because there's one conversation about whether the Justice Department would prosecute. And then there's another conversation about what he did that's violated the law. When you watch CNN and MSNBC, they won't parse that out because they have people from the Justice Department who believe in the rule of law and that they are never actually sparing elites while punishing the most lower ranking officers or lower ranking employees.
Yes, correct. Now, in the event that Trump is charged under 793, it was my understanding that we're talking about 793E.
Yeah.
So, to the best of my recollection, 793E is a maximum punishment of 10 years in prison per count. Now,
I think so.
What they could do, and we don't know, we don't even know if he's going to be charged, but what they could do is make every single one of those documents a separate count. Or they
Yeah.
can make each box one count, and there were 15 boxes. Or they can just have the whole case as one count. But in
Yeah.
any event, 793E is 10 years. The Intelligence Identities Protection Act is 10 years. And obstruction of justice is 5 years. Making a false statement is 5 years. Now, another thing that's going to weigh very importantly on this is, are these, in the event that he's charged, are these going to be charged as one single criminal act? All different charges, but one criminal act. In that case, were he to be convicted, all those sentences would run concurrently.
Yes.
So you're probably looking at a maximum sentence of 10 years. If they were charged separately as separate criminal acts, well, it could be 250 years in prison.
Right. But if we look at precedent, I
Yes.
mean, my guess, if Trump wasn't Trump,
Right.
then it'd be probably like, what, 2 to 4 years, maybe, if
Yeah.
we look at like the average.
Yeah. Reality Winner got an unusually harsh
Yeah.
sentence. She got 5 years and 3 months, I think is what it was. But yeah, we're probably looking at 2 or 3, 4 years. Mhm.
Uh-huh. Okay. So,
Excuse me. Let me add one thing. Because this is a national security case, he would be ineligible to go to a minimum security work camp.
mhm.
He would have to go to a real, honest to God prison.
Right. Because they put you in this like special security designation
Exactly.
and track your every move.
Every move.
And, yeah.
I was told right to my face in prison that I was too dangerous to allow the public to be exposed to me.
Well, that's funny because Donald Trump's such a talker that if he was in prison, he would actually be a national security threat because he'd be talking about what he did with everybody who was like a fellow inmate.
Definitely. Definitely.
Okay, so there's this figure who's popped up in this, and I just wonder if you have any opinion on him. Kash Patel, who worked for the House Intelligence Committee, who I think has done some work helping Devin Nunes when it come to like the counter investigation into what everyone was doing to go after Trump with Russia. But he's apparently been giving quote unquote advice or like operates some like counselor role or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways, he's made this claim that Trump had declassified all the documents that went to the archives. Not the boxes that were in the estate that the FBI seized, but before that, he had made this claim that the ones that the archives had were just declassified.
Right.
But this is something that they're talking about on MSNBC and CNN. We don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but I did want to just hit this point very briefly of there was no process ever undertaken by Donald Trump to declassify.
No, and the declassification law says that if a president does declassify documents, which in most cases he has the authority to do, those documents then have to be posted on the website of the National Archives, the National Security Archives, or the appropriate presidential library so that scholars have access to them. Mm-hmm. And that was never done with a single page of these documents.
Yeah.
I have one friend who served on the Senate Intelligence Committee, and he told me that Kash Patel is a problem, not a problem for the case against Trump. He's a problem because he's a nut.
Yeah.
There's another person that I think we're going to be hearing a little bit about in the near future, and it's this guy who founded Judicial Watch.
Yeah, I'm glad you're going to bring him up.
Yeah, this guy apparently was able to get into Trump's ear several months ago and convinced him that a case that Judicial Watch had launched that was heard by the Supreme Court meant that anything that Trump took with him was automatically declassified because they're Trump's personal possession. Yeah. And several of the attorneys around Trump said, as soon as this guy appeared on the scene, everything just went downhill because Trump kept coming back to this, that he's innocent. They're his documents. They belong to him. They don't belong to the country or to the National Archives. He just can't fathom the notion that he was involved in public service. And in public service, you're working for the people and the government, and these documents are not your personal possessions.
Yeah, this is Tom Fitton. And again, what we've got going on here is this idea that somehow the Clintons got preferential treatment to me. And just to clarify, what happened was Judicial Watch said that we want access to these records with a historian whose name was Taylor Branch. There were apparently interviews that were conducted with President Clinton when he was president with this historian. And the National Archives say that these were not presidential records, and they do not have the authority to designate them as such. And so he lost his case in trying to get these recordings through FOIA. And because Tom Fitton lost, he's presuming that that means that the Donald Trump gets to keep the records. The logic is very flimsy.
The logic is very flimsy. And it was funny to me that the people around Trump, those people who are the most concerned about his precarious legal position right now, are the most worried that he's taking the advice of Tom Fitton.
Yeah. All right, I got one more thing for you, which is just to take note of the fact that we get an idea of where some of these documents would have been in Mar-a-Lago, where the agent writes that it's in the storage room. It's in the residential suite. So we know in the residential suite, this is what Bill Arkin has said, that there's a leather-bound book that was taken that had records. Crazy. And then Pine Hall, which I had not heard about before, but I looked this up, and it's apparently an antechamber or a vestibule. So it looks like it would be some connecting area in Mar-a-Lago. I wonder if it has foot traffic. I don't know, but it's kind of like odd to think that that might be a place that had classified records.
Man, it's...
And then 45's office was obviously a place that they were going to look. So this was where they were authorized to look for all the documents. And that's, and look, I'm not going to go through the defense for why things were redacted. I do, by and large, feel like they probably had some good justification. I think there's too much that was, but I err on the side of transparency all the time. So you're always going to hear me say
too.
that there's too many redactions. And I just, I don't know. They always have this, they subscribe to this thing called the mosaic theory, right? They have this fear that no matter whether they just are using a scalpel to just only protect names and locations and dates and very specific information, that even if they take those out, you'll be able to read it, I guess, kind of like you read a Mad Lib, and you could fill it in with your own information and you would be able to figure out what they were talking about.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's the mosaic theory that you can take all this redacted information, like you can take reams of unclassified documents and put together a classified program, kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. That's what they're afraid of.
All right. Well, I'm just going to put this up on the screen here. Again, I just want to remind people that we do it better than all 8 of these people, whatever they were doing. And they're not doing much. And we also, I have another good example. We do it better than this guy who was brought on to literally, I'm not even kidding, explain the meaning of top secret documents to the public. You really need to break down what it means for a document to be top secret. I mean, how dumb do they think we are?
My God.
we want to, I think the public wants to understand the issues like we've discussed. They want to know the legal jeopardy. They want to know what's real. They want to know the politics. And maybe for your final thoughts here on the way out, has the FBI stepped in it? Is there a disaster here? Have they gone too far? Is there something that they need to be concerned about? Because, or are the Republicans gonna have a really hard time trying to turn this around and make it an issue of abuse of power? Because they're really trying. I mean, they're trying. Yeah. They're trying with the Hunter Biden's laptop and the FBI, and it looks like they might have something, and it's not just smoke, but there is something about what was
Yeah.
going on, and Chuck Grassley and some of the other senators have been focusing on it. There was Mark Zuckerberg in the last day. He said that the FBI came to him and told Facebook that they needed to change the algorithm so people couldn't see the story as much in their news feed. So something was going on, but I don't know that I don't know if this becomes like another prime example of the FBI abusing its power. I think it remains to be seen.
I agree with you. I think it does remain to be seen. And I think what it boils down to is this is going to be a political decision, whether or not to charge Donald Trump. Do you really want to charge a former president with a crime? This isn't 1974 anymore. The country has changed. It's different. And I think in many ways, this whole operation against Trump has been a gift to him because it keeps him in the news. It keeps him relevant. It riles up his base. People are rallying around him. On the other hand, it allows challengers or would-be challengers like Ron DeSantis, for example, to try to poke holes in the persona of Donald Trump and make a name for himself. It also sets a very bad precedent. You know, what's to stop the Republicans now from looking to charge Joe Biden or Hunter Biden or whatever the daughter's name is, Abby Biden or whatever her name is? It just seems to be a bad precedent.
Yeah, it does seem to be kind of one of those things where, I mean, you think of it like political offenses as we talk about them under the extradition treaty. It's like you're never going to be able to agree. Although, I mean, look, in this case, he did actually do something that seems to be prohibited by our law. But like, it's far and away different from saying like, oh, that president's a war criminal and he needs to be held accountable. That person authorized torture. That person was involved and is implicated in a genocide against an entire population. Like that to me screams like you need to do something. But I mean, Donald Trump took some boxes, kept them in his estate, didn't do anything. They haven't suggested that he did anything with the documents yet. Just had them there. They weren't safe because of the traffic, but okay, we were talking with him about getting them back for almost 8 or 9 months, maybe a little longer. And now we got them. Now we have them back. So it just seems like the problem has been resolved. And I mean,
and you have to ask, was there damage to the national security? And there's no evidence that there was any damage.
I mean, all we will hear is on MSNBC, they'll talk about all the people who traffic through Mar-a-Lago, and that is true. And the no foreign, you know, the reason like that caught my attention is because it would seem that maybe part of this affidavit mentions who comes in and out of Mar-a-Lago and that maybe they're concerned about that person. You know, there's been a lot of speculation about, oh, there are certain characters who were showing up to Mar-a-Lago and the FBI got worried. I also see there was like a story that somebody actually infiltrated Mar-a-Lago and was moving around. I don't know if you saw this.
It wasn't that Chinese woman, was it?
No, it was just like,
remember that?
Her name was like Inga or, well, one second, let me see. Mar-a-Lago, infiltrated. Oh yeah, numerous times by a Ukrainian woman.
Oh, geez.
Who was using a fake name. We'll wrap with this. This is a good way to end because this is actually something that I think would make the FBI crazy. And it was that this woman came in claiming to be an heiress from a famous European banking dynasty, visited the seaside golf resort on numerous occasions, mingling with guests, including Mr. Trump. This is a report in The Independent from the UK. The woman, however, was not a wealthy heiress, instead a Ukrainian-born daughter of a truck driver in Illinois, and with an alleged shady background connecting her to charity scams and organized crime.
Oh my
God. So the credit goes to Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and the Organized Crime Corruption Reporting Project that found that Anna de Rothschild, the woman who claimed to be a member of the Rothschild banking family, charmed her way onto Trump's property and into the power center of the Republican Party. Her name is Inna Yassishin, a Ukrainian woman who immigrated to the U.S. and is now subject to an FBI investigation. And yeah, just scammed her way in. Is in the Mar-a-Lago residence. She claimed, yeah. So, anyways, there's no reason to say anything more. But like that would be a problem. The fact that it's so easy to infiltrate Mar-a-Lago.
Oh yes, that's a big problem. Yes,
All right.
indeed.
All right. Well, I want to let you go. You've been gracious with your time.
My pleasure. Good to talk to everybody.
This was the article you wrote that everyone should get over to Consortium News and read. Don't charge Trump with espionage. Nobody should face the Espionage Act charge unless they are working for a foreign power and mean harm in the United States. So we can head over there. And so remain vigilant. My last thing to everyone will be, is you're watching the media and they get lazy about how they describe the Espionage Act or any of these things.
Yep.
Just be mindful of what they're doing, because what I'm most fearful of in this moment is that they make the Espionage Act seem like something that the Justice Department doesn't abuse when they use it against individuals. And also, let me remind you, if you want to repeal or abolish the Espionage Act, you're not a traitor. You're not treasonous. That's what they were saying about Rand Paul. I found this to be one of the most awful, baffling but one of the most disgusting things that was making its way around the internet in the last several days. So it's really worth saying. All right, we're going to sign off here. I'll put our faces back on screen. I'll put my site down here. And I'll just say goodbye to everyone and thank you for engaging and being such a wonderful audience. And we'll be back soon with updates on this investigation. Until then, have a good weekend.
Bye, everybody.